there are factors and formulas and calculations that are already being used across jurisdiction. So I call me optimistic. I don't think this is as hard, frankly, as accounting for inventory or something like that, trying to get that straight across 150 countries. I think this is probably easier because it was developed as a global standard, because this is a global question from the start.
Jackie?
I think you are right. And even I must say, when it comes to US GAAP and IFRS, in the end, the differences are not big ones, and we work together.
Yeah.
We work together to avoid any disruption. But here, I think the critical question here really is that we must have one global which we apply in the same way. Otherwise, it doesn't serve capital markets, it doesn't serve consumers. And that's important that Asia is here with us. I just say, and Africa. I've been very much encouraged that African, by the way, ministers of finance, ministers of environment came out to say that we want to be among the first who adopt these global standards. Of course, for political reasons, but also reasons they want to be part of the supply chain. Simple, clear, global is the best solution. The second issue will then be, will they be mandatory or voluntary in the countries? But if we have the same assurance for companies, difference is not perhaps that big. Some areas may be have difficulties to make it mandatory, others make it simpler. But you, Brian, is better expert on that area.
Well, actually, the one thing, remember, that one of the problems going on in the U.S. is it's not going through the accounting side.
Yeah.
It's actually going through the securities disclosure side, which means it only applies to a very narrow set of the market. I mean, much as everybody thinks it applies a big set, every non-public company has nothing to do with this. And so that's the danger of going through the Securities Exchange Commission equivalent as opposed to getting a part of literature. That then stops the leakage, especially around the environment. That stops the ability to take something out of the public domain and hide it. And so I think that's where we're trying to get to standardization at the core disclosure accounting. The annual report, put it in your annual report, get the audit processes on top of that. And that, to Erkki's earlier point, it requires it to be somewhat straightforward at the beginning. It's never simple. Otherwise, you have the problem, we're not going to have enough people to do it, and the arguments about this is hard, and you're going to start to lose enthusiasm for it. So.
Can I just bring up leadership here? Because this whole concept of divulging information on sustainability, human capital, governance has been about providing a 360 on risk that is just not encapsulated in financial reporting. Yet the most prominent central banker in the world recently on a panel, Jerome Powell over at the Fed, said last week in Stockholm that the Federal Reserve will not become a climate policymaker. Is that exactly what Jay Powell should be doing?
I was actually in Stockholm. I know Jay well. He said that there, but I just wanted to make a difference. He said that it's not policymaker. Federal Reserve is not policymaker. On the other hand, financial stability belongs to the central banks. So disclosure of the risks is critical also for central banks, but you should separate these two issues. And when we talk about disclosure, it's critical to be able to make the assessment of the risks which bank and the economy are facing.
Brian, we know it's a very...
meanwhile, just so you know, if you read the papers today, they're starting their process on risk assessment in climate in the big banks. So he's making a distinction, which is policy versus supervisory and analysis of the actual risks involved. What he's saying is, I'm not the policymaker to decide which industries, and that's somebody else's job. But they are looking at, literally, we're going through the exercise beginning as we speak.
Does this go to the heart of the backdrop in the United States that everyone's dancing around the politics now? There's been pushback from some US Republicans about whether companies should even be in the business of stakeholder capitalism. They should be purely focused on profits. And we're coming up to a 2024 presidential election campaign. Could the politics derail the conversation we're having here?
No, because our company's been around for almost 240 years. So we were there in the election where they actually really had a tough election in 1800. The plays are made about. So go see Hamilton. You'll see when people shot each other after elections, and the vice president brought up his treason and things like that. It's, these institutions, these great institutions, we all sit behind. It will be here through governments and changes. So the idea is you have to have something that works for society. And so the politics ebb and flow, and there'll be a lot of debate about it. But I think if you talk to business people, investors, and others in the United States, they're going to run the companies based on a view of how to create long-term value. And I don't think that gets derailed by politics.